Hello, welcome to the video. I'm super excited because I have one day until Fearless Feminine launch cart close. So I thought it would be a good time to bust through some Fearless Feminine myths. So if you're like, what is Fearless Feminine? That is my online business generator academy. And it's really about facing your fears. So that's sort of like the masculine part about like taking action and like going for it in your business. But then we have the feminine power part, which is about doing it your way, doing it with pleasure, doing it sometimes like defying general business logic. Like I just submitted a case study on my email and on my post of Andrea, who actually incidentally is my online business manager. And hey, Andrea is also editing my YouTube videos. How she was able to get her first 3 clients without a website, without posting anything on social, purely just the word of mouth and pitching her own local businesses. So that's what I love about Fearless Feminine Results is we really do use the manifestation angle. So sometimes the results defy conventional business logic. So that's why I thought it would be a good way to kind of come over some common myths about business, and what's the Fearless Feminine take on that. So got some hot takes coming for you. Stay tuned. If you've been thinking about growing your business, or maybe you're like me and we're an existing business owner and thinking like, brick and mortar leaves a lot to be desired. So maybe you want to take an online business. There are some great advantages: low overhead, wider reach, all the things. Excuse me. So let's just get into it and hit some of the most popular myths. So, myth number 1 is I have to do it all alone. Okay, do not recommend. Want to bust this myth. I definitely had this experience when I was building my private practice business. I did it all alone. Not entirely true because I wish I knew about business coaching back then because I totally would have hired one. But instead, what I did was I blew up all of the existing therapists and I just took them out to lunch and I asked them, what do you think about this? Tell me all your secrets. Tell me the things that worked. Tell me the things that didn't work. All that good stuff. I'm going to grab my water. Give me one sec. I'm giving another presentation today for a corporate gig. So I'm a little fancy today. So I thought it would be good to just double dip and do a little presentation here. So I've got to hydrate here. So again, back to the myth is that I have to do it all alone, okay? Do not recommend. This is how business owners burn out before they even get started. We need mentorship because, like in my example of being a psychologist, they taught you how to be a therapist, but they didn't teach you how to build. They didn't teach you how to run a business. Like none of that was included, even though I went to school for a million years, it felt like, to do that. And so I think a lot of business owners, and this was pre YouTube era where like really you can learn everything online. Okay. So if you're sitting there going like, oh, I want to join Fearless Feminine, but like I'm not liquid for it, just watch my YouTube, watch my podcast. I put tons of free content out there, which I'm getting a little in my head of myself because that is one of the myths coming up. But you do not have to do it all alone. And so that's why coaching mentorship is so like awesome, is that it speeds up the results, it crushes the timelines. You don't have to learn the hard way. I do not recommend learning the hard way, right? So not only if you join Fearless Feminine, do you have my coaching and business expertise, but you also have an incredible group of women who are rooting for you and are also examples of doing amazing things. And I love every round of Fearless Feminine because it actually encourages me to really go for it. And so I'm just so inspired by the women that come through the program because they really truly are thought leaders who are usually moms, although, you know, we're totally inclusive to all women. You don't necessarily have to have children, but often, you know, you attract what you're like. So I do have a lot of mom bosses because that is definitely one of my primary identities. So if you're sounding like you know, you don't have to do it alone, okay? Get help, right? And even if it's like a business buddy, even if it's like binge watching a YouTube channel, like you can go really far with that. if you already have a business, if you want to grow your business, if you want to transition your business online, that's the perfect time for Fearless Feminine, because the Fearless Feminine women are incredible healers, change makers, leaders, revolutionaries, therapists, business owners, creatives, writers, all of those things. And so it's amazing to be in company with such incredible women. So, myth number two is I need a huge budget to succeed. Okay. So, I notice this a lot with, particularly if people have an academic or a professional background. It's like when they want to start a business, they want to do it right. Okay. And I think that that is great, like super well intentioned. And I think you want to kind of have proof of concept first. So maybe you want to get a first client. Maybe you want to actually see, can your business make money if you're completely new, before you set up everything. Okay. So do what feels good to you. If you're one of those people who wants to be legit, like go for it, right? But I do think I even was listening to a bookkeeper accountant talking about this. Like, you really do want to make sure it's a business you're going to stick with, before you create all of the infrastructure around that. So once you get a client, once you figure out you like it, once you made a little bit of money, like the first one, that's when you can go ahead and do some of the business infrastructure pieces. And you really don't need to have a huge budget depending on what kind of business you have. And that's what I love about online business, is that there's much lower overhead. You don't have to have like a brick and mortar placement. If you're selling like coaching services or even digital products, there's no physical products, which is one of the myths as well. Um, and so really the biggest, like many business owners can start an online business with purely time and the willingness to like go out and create the content and pitch themselves. So you do not have to have a huge budget. And I think that that is one of the most appealing things about online business. And that's definitely why I have transitioned from a brick and mortar to an online business, is it's just very like cost effective. And then hello, like life laptop lifestyle. Say that 10 times fast. Laptop lifestyle, laptop lifestyle. It's hard to say. Okay, so we do not need a big budget. I think we can start where we are. And again, that proof of concept is so important when we make our first sale, when we, identify our niche, when we enroll that client. First, you want to make sure you actually like it, because that's what all a Fearless Feminine is about, is making sure that your business feels good. Because I've definitely had the opposite experience where I was not honoring my own boundaries and self care and burned out, and business didn't feel good. I liked my clients, they were getting great results, but the day to day was very exhausting. And so I don't want that for you. I want a business that feels good. Okay, myth number three is the niche, right? I should only have one niche. Okay, this one's controversial, of course. We do hear that niching down is important. We do want people to, they're like, oh, I want a pleasure psychologist. That's Dr. Megan, right? So we kind of want that like name, sort of niche recognition, so that people will know when to refer to you, or like you'll pop into their head when they're thinking of you, right? However, I do think most of us don't want a niche, right? Especially if you're sort of in a healing modality. Maybe you feel like everyone's your customer, okay? And so there's that saying that if everyone's your customer, then no one's your customer. And so I do think you want to have a really clear sense of who you're talking to. And that's the perspective that I take. I talk to women-owned business owners, generally who are mom bosses, who are doing things like podcasts and YouTube channels and books, and they're creatives who are wanting to, inspire change in the world through their powerful words. So that's sort of like the Fearless Feminine vibe, right? So if that's you, thank you so much for watching. Whether it's the YouTube channel, the podcast, or whether you want to come a little closer and come into Fearless Feminine, cart closes tomorrow. 24 hours left. Can't wait to see who all is going to join. There's going to be an amazing group of women. So, I think that there's no hard and fast rules in businesses. You can always find exceptions to the rule. And so I think it really is what feels good to you. I think in general, it can be a great exercise to figure out who you're talking to, what do they need, what's their problem solution outcome. These are all great things to weave into your content. But I think, a niche is personal. Like, do you want to have a niche? And, I think a good way to look at this if you're beginning is, um, maybe like what did you need to know a few years ago when you were first starting? Or I really like to, if you do have existing clients, what's the trend in your clients? So, for example, I get a lot of creatives, I get a lot of moms, I get a lot of people who have been healing trauma, I get a lot of people who are empaths, right? So, like, that's kind of the flavor of the people that I love working with and that love working with me. So niche, if that really helps you focus and narrow in, I think that that's a good strategy, but I don't think we want it to be a golden handcuff situation. So I think run that through your filter and, kind of sense what feels good for you. Okay, myth number 4 is I must be an expert before starting. Um, so being an expert before starting, I think trips a lot of people up, and that is part of the reason why I love the coaching industry is that it is an unregulated field, and so in a way, it's very like innovative. I think the flip side of that is that anyone can say that they're a coach, right? So like when I refer people to healers, I always say get a recommendation, and that helps to when you have an unregulated thing like healing, anybody can hang their shingle as a healer or even a coach. And so getting a recommendation, following their content. But for a lot of people, they go on the certification addiction, right? Like, oh, I've got to get certified EFT. I've got to get certified death doula. I've got to get certified Reiki. I've got to get certified EFT. I've got to get certified ethical coach, and so I am obviously into education. I feel like if you watched my last video, I talked about my decade in academia, a decade doing like personal healing work, and then it's not quite a decade, but the past few years, I've really invested a ton in coaching. And so I even fell into this as a psychologist. Becoming a coach, I really felt like I was at a higher standard because I have already had this professional career and there is licensure and those things attached. And so this one even kind of tripped me up. Even though I had a lot of expertise, I felt like it had to kind of be perfect. And so the perfectionism sort of demon kind of kicks in and it can really stall progress. So if a certification makes you feel more confident, that's cool. But I think it's really about owning it. And that's what we teach in Fearless Feminine is just like owning your expertise. And a lot of times it's because you've healed the things in your life that you're helping your clients with. And so just that lived experience of you getting the results a lot of times is sharing your story can be one of the most compelling content that you can do. And so, for me with Fearless Feminine, I have had anxiety. And so I've had a lot of fears, and I had a lot of fears about showing up on camera, partly because of body image, confidence, those kind of things. And so I had to go on my own fearless journey. And, I felt like, you know, because I had the professional background and I was coming in already having worked with a ton of clients and I knew I could get results for people, but I did feel like I had to have those 100K launches. And so, like, I felt like I had to have the overnight success thing. And I just think that that's maybe more rare. And so you don't have to be an expert before starting. You have to be confident. And that's what Fearless Feminine is all about. How do we identify those fears? How do we have the skills to transform them, transmute them, release them? And how do we do the damn thing, right? And so that's what we really focus on. It's this blend of like intuitive sort of insight or calling, sort of that feminine energy of receiving and manifesting. And then there's that masculine of how do we uncomplicate business and just take a simple, pleasurable plan that we can stick with, right? Myth number 5 is I should only chase high paying clients. Okay, so there's definitely some pros and cons of whether you are working with low ticket items or if you're offering high ticket. I think in general, sometimes it can feel easier to sell low ticket because there's not that barrier to entry. However, you have to sell a lot to be making good money with low ticket items. So I think if you are going to want to do something like that, something like YouTube is great because then you can get a huge reach and then you can kind of get those numbers with time happening. If you're wanting to establish yourself right away, it can be a little more intimidating, a little more like bringing up that money mindset, scarcity, self worth stuff, right? And that's like a big thing of what we deal with in Fearless Feminine as well. But often, if we can just get one or two high ticket clients, that can be a great boost to your self esteem, to your cash, to multiple recurring income, all the things that we love there. I think it's good to kind of have that ladder of products, some freebies, some, low ticket items. I'm going to be launching a membership next at the end of the year. So that'll kind of be my affordable offer. So if you're looking at Fearless Feminine and you're like, oh, it's not really in a budget, the next one's for you. Okay. But if you really do want to build your business, overcome your fears, and it's not just business, y'all, with Fearless Feminine, I feel like I've gotten people more life results even than business results. Okay. People healing from divorce, people flying the flying trapeze for the first time and becoming an aerial artist, people leading like pleasure revolutions online. We've even had a Fearless Feminine that transitioned to a man. And so I think it's one of those things where you really, uh, when you get the thing of facing your fears and going for it, not only does that help you in business, but it helps you so much in life. Okay. So, I think just going for it is really good and doing it in a way that feels good to you. Myth number 6 is I need a large social media following to succeed. Okay. I love within the pleasure coaching, business coaching paradigm, there are so many examples of people that highly convert with tiny audiences. And I mean, it's still relatively big compared to like a newbie, but not like a million, more like 1,000, right? And so, really exciting to see that that super is possible. And I do think while you're growing as a coach, your edge is that you can offer personal things, okay? Someone who's got a 7-figure business, maybe they're not doing sales calls, maybe they're not answering comments, like they've grown too big for that. And so that's your edge, is the personal connection there. And so definitely don't need a large social media following. You need an engaged following and you need the right people, okay? Because sometimes those really big followings may be a bunch of bots, they may be paid for, they may just be a bunch of random people who like aren't your ideal customer. So I definitely think curating a intentional following is way more important than the numbers, right? We all sort of get caught up in the outcome of numbers, like number of followers, how much money, and like, of course, we want all of those things, but those often are not necessarily mapped on to the conversion. So, what we really want to do is convert people, okay, so they can buy our stuff, right? And so, you want to do that in the way that feels good to you. You want to pick the platforms that feel good to you. You want to pick the medium that feels good to you, and you want to do it in a way that's great. So, for example, I'm streaming this to YouTube, I'm streaming it to Facebook, and then we're going back and we're converting it to a YouTube video. So, it's doing double duty for me here. It's part of my launch. It's part of my YouTube library. And so streaming just feels really good for me. I can just hit play and go for it. And then we can kind of do the rest in post. So doing it in a way that feels good is good. Now, it took me a while to build up the courage to get on YouTube. Hello, YouTube. So glad to be here. I started with Facebook. So if you're watching this on Facebook, hey, you're one of the OGs, right? Using Riverside to do all of that. Highly recommend, like that a lot. But generally, if you're starting out, like one platform is good, maybe two. A lot of people do YouTube and Instagram. A lot of people have had success on Facebook only, or Facebook in a podcast or something like that. But I think generally mastering one platform is always a good move. And then you can start to repurpose, you can start to stream, you can kind of do some of these things that like double or triple dip, which is definitely a Fearless Feminine tip there. Doing it in a way that feels good and then repurpose, and that's where business can get so much easier. Once you've created content, once you have a library of episodes, then people can binge your stuff. And by the time they're ready to buy from you, they already know what you're all about. Okay. Myth number 7 is I should only sell physical products. I I don't like that. I don't like going to the post office. Obviously, you can get the mail from home sort of kits. But I found for me, I had a jewelry business for a little bit, and I just found going to market, selling things online on Etsy, like I just did not enjoy the babysitting aspect. I didn't enjoy mailing packages. There's overhead, there's cost of goods sold, there's a lot with physical products. And so I have ditch that business model completely. I do have products, but they're all digital courses, or ebooks or products of some sort. And so I don't want anything that I'm having to mail anyone. So that's just a personal preference. If you like to mail, like by all means. But I love digital products because there's no overhead. Okay. And then it's the closest thing you can get to passive income because you create it once and then you can kind of advertise accordingly. Myth number 8 is I shouldn't share my failures or vulnerabilities. Okay, so I, a la Brene Brown, really do believe that vulnerability is the most powerful thing you can do. When I saw and read her, saw her TED Talk and then read her book, I was like, ah, this is the book that I wanted to write, right? And so I think it's one of those things that it's so powerful when you're sharing your vulnerabilities and like your story can be someone else's instruction manual. So for me, that just fits because I am an open book. And so I've shared a lot of my life on the podcast and my posts and my content. And I've shared the good, the bad, and the ugly. And so I think if that's not natural to you, then that maybe is not the way to go. But if that feels like a good fit, I think it can build a lot of trust. It can also get people to like you. It can also, provide that profound transformation if someone really like recognizes themselves in the story that you're sharing. So I'm a big fan of that. I also think that there is a lot of lying in marketing. And so I do think it's really helpful when people do share their failures, when they share their upsets. You don't want to do it as it's happening where you're like bleeding out, right? But you want to do it once the wound is healed. And so I think sharing some of the scars, sharing like the before and afters, or just help like humanize the process. Otherwise, I feel like it's that like Instagram plastic lifestyle that like I think we're all over, right? Over the past few years, I think we're done chasing perfectionism. It's exhausting. I think people really resonate to like when you show up as a real person. At least that's the fearless feminine way. So like if you're not into like vulnerability and sharing, I think that that is one of the pillars of fearless feminine. So like if that's your thing, I've also maybe felt like I've shared too much at times. And so I think it's good, sometimes if you're intuitive and words speak through you, sometimes I've got this vulnerability hangovers where you're like, oh my God, did I really just share that? If you listen to my podcast, it's across a few years now, but like if you listen to the episodes like back to back to back to back, you will hear bits and pieces of my entire life story. It doesn't feel like that much in one episode, but if you were to watch all of it, and I know the people that I follow that I really love, like I know pretty much their whole life story. And so I think that you can choose what you want to share. Like I don't necessarily share a lot of pictures of my daughter. But like I do share a lot about my life. My husband doesn't particularly like to be in a lot of pictures and videos, so he's not featured much, but that's just his choice. I'm choosing to share this with the world, and they can kind of opt out of that if that's not in their comfort level. I do think if you're more introverted, you may need more privacy, and so just regulating to that. You can share aspects of your life, but maybe certain things are off limits. And so I think just navigating all of that is really important. That's something that we often do in Fearless Feminine is like a bunch of people are on my feed that I maybe don't want. They're not my customers. Maybe they're family members. Maybe they're people who would disagree with what I'm having to say. And so sometimes we have to remove them and block them and do a little edit to really be able to speak freely on it. Or, you could be like, I know my mother in law watches some of this stuff and my mom and dad do. And so maybe it's TMI for them sometimes. But I think overall they've been super supportive and, love to hear the random stuff I have to share with the world. Okay, myth number 9, I should always follow the trends. So I think that this can be kind of a algorithm hacking move. I do think it can become kind of gimmicky. And so, like, let's be real, taboo and sensation does make people click. So I feel like that is a thing that, people want to kind of incorporate. It's like the secret of, or don't make this mistake, or like, those kind of things. People are just like very naturally curious and want to know what the dish is behind that. So I think that that's a thing. But I think a trend might get your post noticed, but I think we don't want that to be your main content strategy. We want to have your content pillars and kind of have like people know me for this certain thing, and then if something happens that I feel called to speak on, then I'll insert that in. But I think you have to be a little cautious with that because, a trend can be really popular for 1 minute and then you may never hear of it again. So you don't want all your content to be trendy because I think it can kind of come off as inauthentic. Also, if you have stuff scheduled out and then like a world event happens and you insert like a post in there, I feel like it is a little bit of a weird flavor if you've gotten pre-programmed stuff and then you write this big post. So I think just like use some like sensitivity and finesse to kind of like work those things in there. And I don't think you have to comment on everything either. Just what the things that, feel good to you. And then finally, myth number 10, I don't need a business plan. Well, I've definitely run businesses without a business plan and often written a business plan a few years in. So I definitely don't think you need one. But a plan in general is helpful. Okay, if you've gotten one of those, I remember I was applying for a grant to buy a building and I had to do a whole business plan. And so I downloaded a kit and I wrote the whole thing. And I feel like it actually can be a great exercise just to provide you clarity, kind of like the niche thing where you're trying to figure out who you're talking to and your marketing and your hook and your content pillars and all that stuff. But I do think we need a plan, okay? But I think we need a simple plan, okay? Sometimes if you're like me and you overcomplicate things because you got shiny object syndrome and a million ideas because you're a visionary leader, we might want to simplify the plan. And so I think that's one of the best parts of Fearless Feminine is I've done it the hard way. You're welcome. And so I want to give you the easy way, okay? I want to give you the expedited way to get results by cutting through the irrelevant stuff, okay? So I do think a plan is good. I think it could be as simple as picking a platform, picking a posting schedule, picking your pillars. Ooh, they're all P's. And then like doing it pleasurably. And then maybe I'll add psychology, like the mindset behind it. That's really good. Okay, see, look at the genius things happening on the fly when you let the divine feminine energy flow through. So I think a plan is important, but I think a simple plan, is really helpful because then it can give you the flexibility. It doesn't feel confining. You can orient it to like your values and what feels good to you. And what I love about Fearless Feminine is these women are getting like results that defy logic. Okay, so like my online business manager was able to get 3 clients, myself included, and she has revolutionized my business. Yay! Thank you, Andrea, again. Just through word of mouth and just by having the courage to pitch someone that, a local baker that she felt like would be a great client. And so, going from like being nervous to talk on the calls to like pitching clients and having like an overnight business so that, she could stay home with her kid over the summer. Like, that's the fearless feminine dream, right? Or we had Katie, who was already an entrepreneur, very successful in her own right, but really felt the call to write a book. And so, not only did she write a book, but she was manifesting a house and she did it totally on her terms. And she worked the deal herself without even a realtor. So, that's the fearless feminine way. And then what happened? She ended up going to New York, falling in love, working in a social media company and meeting with editors and agents about getting the book published. Like, so good. And like, literally, this was in, within the probably 6 months, I would say, but like it's been about a year since I ran the last Fearless Feminine. So amazing results there. We have lots of other women leading pleasure revolutions. I have a therapist client, Kim, who really is an incredible psychic and healer. She is my healer. And she created a Blue Star, kind of like Reiki certification. It's a type of energy modality. And she made it all online, all through passive income, and was really able to create a program that supported her. And hello, she's initiating new energy healers onto the planet. So she's calling in all the star seeds. So again, like even if you have a non-traditional business, like I am your woman here, okay? Because I specialize in working with holistic entrepreneurs. A lot of my entrepreneurs are either beginning, but I think like even if they're beginning, they have tons of corporate experience experience, or they're really gifted at what they do, or they're a natural healer. Okay, so this is not like a newbie beginner's course. Like, these women are already experts in their own rights. It's just that they're having some kind of life transition. And I think my therapist background kind of helps facilitate that. It's like, it is as much life coaching, although I gotta say, as a psychologist, that does feel a little cringy to me. I'm sorry, all you life coaches, you do amazing work, but it's just, I think, the stereotype around it. But like, it really is an embodiment program. It is about tapping into your feminine power. It is about manifesting your desires and creating a life that feels good from you. And a lot of times, what blocks us in business, and I've been here, I think I'm a little here already, is that sometimes our life isn't feeling good. Like me running two businesses, that doesn't feel entirely good to me because I'm just busy. Okay. And so I want to be in that energetic receiving mode of the feminine power. When I'm super busy juggling a lot of things, that's just more masculine energy, right? So we kind of got to get our life straight before our business can really, ascend to new heights. So, um, 24 hours to get it. I want to work with you. I want to see you in Fearless Feminine, and I want to grow your business, and I want to pleasure up your life, and I want to work your mindset so you can have all the beautiful things happen that you deserve. So thank you so much for watching. Catch you next time. Go click that